Welcome to Noble, a network of owners, business leaders, and entrepreneurs. Here, we focus on the 5 stages of business: launching an idea, establishing a business, hiring employees, creating leaders, and then expanding your impact. We hope you enjoy today's session.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. Very much appreciate it. Always great to be here. I'm glad you set those goals out there. It's our new fall season, and we're just reminded of all those things. So we appreciate that. Thanks for the reminder on that. I'm going to go back to it's fall of 2002. During my 4th season of coaching high school football, preparing for a team we were playing that week called Logan High School. It was 1 year after starting another business. On September 18th, 2002, my friend and dear brother in the Lord and college teammate, Jerry LaGambina, who had been on Campus Crusade for Christ staff for 26 years and was actually the leader of the Jesus Film Project. It's one of the largest evangelical outreaches in the history of the world. He sent me a book, and the book was called The Treasure Principle by Randy Alcorn. And I'll tell you what, that changed my life almost from the moment I got it. But it took me until April of 2003 to actually read it, because during football season, those crazy football coaches think that we have to spend all of our days and nights on football. So I really didn't get around to reading that book and processing it and the content, and took me on a journey I call the EROI journey. What's the eternal return on your investment? And in my life, that was a major Kairos moment. And I'll just define that as a specific opportune time that was appointed by God for an action decision in my life to be and live a life with an eternal heavenly return. It also causes a paradigm shift, and it did in my life for sure. It's a significant change in my worldview and beliefs and understanding of God, Jesus Christ, and the Christian faith. And after being a Christian for 28 years and growing up in a wonderful home where that was the foundation of who we were, it drastically changed my perspective on God and salvation. And I was transformed as a result of encountering Jesus and his teachings at a whole nother level through the book called The Treasure Principle. In Oswald Chambers' devotion, actually just yesterday, he called it this. If you want, you can look that up. It's called My Utmost for Your Highest. It's his October 13th devotion. He calls it an abandoned devotion to Jesus Christ. So to give you an ROI context, just why I say ROI, I come from the technology consulting field, and our company was totally based on providing return on investment for our clients. We did engineering, development, and employment of technology using consulting and services. We did that for Fortune 200 companies. And our goal was a significant impact and improve the user experience, productivity, and reducing their risks, and hopefully drastically reducing their life cycle costs. It was a spend on engineering and development that organizations at that time were not spending at all on. And so we had an ROI model. So that's where the ROI comes from at this time. And that's my background, why I have eternal ROI. So here's the fundamental content. If we just think of this, it's Treasure Principle by Randy Alcorn. You can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. Just let that resonate in you. We can't take it with us, but we can send it on ahead. Here's the considerations during that time that I really had to make. That time as we know it, it will stop. As we know it today in this world, it's going to stop. All our resources as we know them will go away. In the sporting world, in athletics, we say this: Father Time is undefeated. You might hear athletes say that. As they age and get older, the Father Time always wins. It always gets you. No matter what, your cycle in being an athlete is going to be over. So how much time and resources do I have left? I had to ask, that's the considerations I was making when I read the treasure principle. Here's my paradigm shift. I had a true realization of God's economy, probably for the first time in my life. God's currency, what it was really serving and generosity, not just giving. It was overwhelming generosity, as Jesus calls us to have. And it's the actuality of God owns it all. I just didn't really ever really realize that. It was always, I'll show you some things later on. I was always parsing things up of what's mine, what I might give to God. It was that way. And it was a realization of what Jesus said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. That's in Matthew 6:21. And I didn't realize that what that really meant until this time, that the heart will follow where we put our treasure. So for our treasure to be, and for us to be heavenly minded, our treasures must be in heaven. And that's where our thought things and our treasure must really be from internally who we are. So think of life as this, and I'll show a pic of this too a little bit later. Think of a dot on a screen, just one big dot. That's our life. Then picture a total line going across the entire screen. It doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an ending. That's life in heaven. I should not live for the little dot that's here. I should live for the treasure than the life that's in heaven. And it was a realization for whatever is given to Christ is immediately touched with immortality by just giving it to Christ. So those are the paradigm shifts that I have. Those are the changes that I had in my life just through really having a revelation through the treasure principle. And here's how it has impacted my life. It's become a foundation for decision making. How does my investment of time, talent, and all my resources, how does that have an eternal effect? So here's a classic example of that. At this time, while I'm coaching, they're building a new stadium at our school. And they're asking for some significant funding at all levels for that stadium. The traditional things of buying bricks and things like that, and putting names on it. But as a significant investment, how much money do I put into the physical stadium versus put into the physical ministry at the school and the things that have a total direct eternal return on their investment? We need stadiums, don't get me wrong, but that's how my thinking started changing. Is this really having a direct impact on eternity? It's always giving. I was always giving because I'll tell you our family background, that's where I came from. That's just our culture of who we are. But I wasn't being generous. It wasn't the absolutely where God really owns everything and the realization I own none of it. So it was a change of heart that I really had. I was holding on to things very tightly that I had versus having open hands and letting them pass through us. God gives us things so we can distribute them to others. I thought, I'll tell this a little bit, a story about my father. He gathered things and we had a construction business. And so there was a big area out back, basically so he could give them away. When my father passed away, we went back and put things into piles. There's always people coming to our house because they know my dad either had something that they needed or at that time, or he was willing to go find it for them. And we put things in piles out there of all these different types of items that my dad gathered, and just for the same full purpose of distributing to others. For me, my transition in life, was from business to being part of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes to being a fill-in director for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes to being fully on staff. That transition took a 3-year process for me. God had to remove things from my life, including even coaching football. Business, sold businesses, stopped part of businesses, gave up football, like I said. And it was also, he put things in my life where I had to deal with some serious, what people would call depression or things like that. But it was really, I felt totally unattached to anything until really I got and followed God's plan for my life. It took me a 3-year process to get that, even after having this revelation, still fighting and trusting the call of God. When God called on the prophet Elisha, I love it. If you read that, he says he burned all his equipment. He took the oxen that was driving his plows and carts, and he had a feast, and then he had no turning back. It's like burning the ships behind you or burning the bridge behind you. I wish I was that responsive to as Elijah was, but it took me 3 years to get there. So here's what it's led to me for. This is just some of the benefits of it. And in this, I just share this as a testimony, period, purely as a testimony. This didn't click on. This is a focus on life that's evolving and moving. Here's what some of the things it's led to: lot deeper relationships with God Himself, trusting God more, and actually being more at peace and joy than ever. I've had probably more trials, tribulations, and things, all that come that way as it does this in our general lives, but particularly being in the ministry world, that just comes our way. But I have more peace and joy than I've had before. Here's life, what I call, with Ted Mung and a friend from church who happened to be dying, and his wife Patty just called to serve those people. My wife Sue has Tuesdays with Becky. It's a friend she volunteered with for years. Can't get around anymore. She spends Tuesdays all afternoons with her. These are the type of things that having a paradigm shift in our thinking and where we spend our time and how we spend it changes how we do it. Having fellowship, prayer with men on their life journeys, praying with people, time with others, and people praying for you. I'm blessed to have a wonderful team of people that invest in me, that understand this in their lives. I'm going to share a PowerPoint now. Or let me see if I can share the screen here. I'll get it. So this is the first, it's old school PowerPoint here. So I kept it in this mode. It's the first, I'm not much of a technology user that way. And so I kept the original one. This is the original one I created way back in the day here. And so forgive me for some of the graphics and things, but you're seeing it, the hardcore thing of the foundation for significance. And a lot of it, I put decision making there because that's what it is. It's just the day-to-day choices that we make. That's going to be ultimately who we are. And if we have that eternal perspective. So you can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. Or Yo can send it on ahead. Sorry about that. And it's the eternal perspective that Randy Alcorn talks about. So coming from our ROI mode, we would be listing things that our clients that are investing in here. But this is the eternal return on our investment of your time and calendar, how we spend it, who we spend it with. That was the biggest one. Who will I spend time with? The resources that God's blessed me with, they're really His. He's given them to me. The story of the talents, He's given them to me. The story of the money of the story of the talents is actually a story of money. But God's given us all so many things. Just think of them: resources, contacts. When I was on FCA, I had to learn how to leverage my influence and my network to move on to the vision of FCA. Our energy and emotions, just what grabs us, and our thoughts, and what motivates us, and what consumes us. What's the things that I actually put emotional energy into? I found myself putting in things in emotional energy that really kind of don't matter, that go away on a regular daily basis, versus putting my things in emotionally get excited about the things that have an eternal impact. I heard a pastor say this in praying: what things are you weeping over for God, with God? It could be even weeping with joy, or weeping that things that you were praying for God and the deliverance of something like that. That's the type of things I want to spend my emotional and energy on. So challenges for me were this: big time on the resources and things. Again, we were giving, but maybe not just an attitude of generosity. It was trusting God in my time, actually giving my time up. I come from you'll see down there, I have thought I deserved comfort and convenience after working. I come from a Kinsey to Kansey mode mentality. And when I say that is that in our construction business, we'd have new workers come on board and they'd say, Mr. D'Orazio, what's your hours? And my dad would say, son, he'd say they're Kinsey to Kansey. And they'd look at us and we'd say, from when you can see in the morning to when you can't see at night. And of course, in the summertime, right? Everybody laugh. They laugh. Oh, that's laugh. We're like shaking our heads. This man's serious. So coming from that work mentality of I'm a first generation American and immigrants, it was hard to. It was the time that was probably the biggest challenge for me. Uh, there's a constant ask for our time and resources from many, many good things. And just the question is how do I spend those and where do I spend them at? What lanes do I swim in relative from events thing from an eternal perspective? And keeping the focus on what God calls us to do. God's called all of us in different areas and being aware of that call. Like I say, it took me 3 years to really realize that to join the SCA staff. But I had to go the hard way versus the easy way, like Elisha did when he burned his carts and you jumped on board. And then I'm working on this right now with a Built to Lead. First one, Built to Lead's actually coaching me, my dear friend Doug Brown. I'm identifying my identity, identifying integrity gaps that I have from. It's okay. These are the things that I really want to do versus where I'm actually spending my time. We're in a process on a regular basis of really even cleaning that up as we still develop my eternal return on investment. There's distractions, expectations from people in society. And of course, there's just conflicts. Am I others focused and my self focus is ultimately usually what it gets down to be. And am I moving from success? I've been blessed with that, but really it's really to significance. So here's my drawing, my original one here. Okay. It's the best I could do in those days with a PowerPoint. So you can laugh if you like, but it is what it is. All right. And so I'm coming from this. This is how I compartmentalize things. The sizes of them is my inability to actually make the graph at that time. It was things were compartmentalized in myself. I didn't include the eternal perspective in all I did. This was a transition for me to go from all of those things are part of my life, filtering them through an eternal perspective of God and eternity. When I invest all those resources we talked about, time, talents, energy, emotions, and all the things that God has blessed us with. So here's the dot in the line that we talked about. I hope I'm living not for the dot, but for the line. And I'm turning things over to Christ so it actually does have immortality. Randy Alcorn also wrote another book about heaven. It's another great read. And it just talks about what life in heaven is and what we can expect there and why investing there. So this was a chart that we used to use. It all had the technology of if you invested so much money in your technology field, how your deployments and your return on investment would be good. But I took and we just looked at us as our the eternal life, eternal return on investment in our life cycle that we go through. It's, there's a place where we have a relationship with the Lord. Hopefully we have some peace with him. And hopefully we're then operating the peace of him. We have a relationship that goes deeper and deeper, and we move on to hopefully a significance in eternal things. And that gets through spending time again in prayer, worship, and consistent devotions and operating under God's will. It's just a process that I won't happen until we get to heaven. And so it's a journey that we're on, and it's just been an exciting thing to be part of. So I had to switch down below and just make sure I actually put the realization of foundation for my decision making needed to be on what an eternal return is on in God's economy, serving, generosity, helping others, spending time with others, sacrificing some things that it is. Again, these are just all testimonies. That's all it is. It's just a testimony of what's happened to me in my life. Prioritization of goals and alignment to my eternal perspective. I had to make some tough choices from friends. Even I had to change some things of where I spent time. I actually stopped coaching football because of this. I love coaching football. I was blessed that God gave that to me and I can affect individuals, but I was called to affect on a larger scale. And that's what God called me to do. So my time, resource, and energy and emotion invest more and more in the eternal treasures. And it's peace and joy again and blessings, not the removal of trials, tribulations, heartaches, sadnesses. Those things still all exist along with the peace and the joy. But I process them from a whole different view today. Those are just things in life that life happens. And of course, then there's the eternal rewards that the Word of God talks about that we have through doing that. So questions for us, and we can have a discussions on some of these as we wrap it, as we go to the end. What's your foundation for decision making relative to how you spend your time, talent, and treasures, what you spend your emotions on? That was a big one for me. Would I just let things get me riled up about anymore? Have you considered an eternal perspective on that? Do you have an eternal return? What is God saying to you about investing? I had to look at my calendar and checkbook all the time relative to this. Is it aligning that integrity gap? I had to look at that. What are the things that consume my thoughts? And whose economy was I operating in? I was kind of operating in the world economy and thought I was in God's economy. Not kind of, I actually was. And of course, it all starts with, do we know Jesus Christ as our Lord and personal Savior? That same person, Jerry Gambino, I mentioned, in 1974, through the Athletes in Action, through our athletic ministry there and being on the team, led me to make a personal commitment with Jesus Christ. And so that was very impactful as well. And then 26 years later, a simple book he sent to me has impacted me since that point. So I always like to do a heart checkup, what I think, what I say, what I look at, and what I set my affections upon. So, you can ponder some of those things as we think about that. Maybe pick one of those out that might be tugging on your heart right now. I go through this process, and it's always a process of asking questions like this and looking at where I like to, what God's called me to be with. I just call them integrity gaps. It's not bad stuff. It's just things that maybe that I could spend my time on different things. It's saying yes to the right things and the things God has a call for me. So if you go to the treasure principle, there's actually a giving covenant on the back of it. And you can see it was April 13th, 2003 that I signed this. So huge Kairos moments in my life and paradigm shifts. Obviously, when I committed my life to the Lord. There's been others in between, but it was when I received this book, and then when I actually processed it and remembered it. And you can see some of the things on there. I just affirmed God's full ownership of me and everything and trusted to me. That's probably the biggest one on there. That alone leads to all the other ones that are on there. And I asked God to show me how to lead others to present joy and future reward of the treasure principle. And and everything in between there. So that was a significant thing in my life and a challenge, like we mentioned. And it's been a life's ride relative to just realizing that and making that a foundation for my decision making on a regular basis. There's another book along with that. It's called The Genius of Generosity. That one hit me about 5 years ago. Chip Ingram is actually a local guy. He's from Gahanna, Ohio. He's a world ministry now. Uh, and he's gave his life to Christ through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So he's fond of it. So he sent us these books to be able to pass out. And that's just having the spirit of the genius of giving and how it can transform your life. And then the last one on me as an effect, I was at a Noble conference last year about this time. And, I'm prophecy, okay, have you ever seen that happen in our church? And it's for other people, correct? Oh, yeah, that's great. I saw somebody else have it. And I was like, wow. That fella got up, walked across the room and looked right at me and said something. And guess what? He challenged me on it. Lavishly give more than you have in every area of your life, even through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Through that, give to other organizations. Lavishly give, and God will bless you and fulfill the things like you've never seen before. So that's been this journey this year. This is the process it's gone through from the early days of my parents living it, and actually now I had a realization of it for myself, to the treasure principle challenging it, to the genius of generosity from Chip Ingram, a beautiful read there, and the prophecy from Noble last year. I don't know. I might not go to the conference. Maybe I should deregister this year. I'm not sure what the prophetic person's going to say. I might have. There's something else on there, but the idea of that is that that's how God works. Just works through other people and through things like this. If we're open-minded to it, there's a lot of times there's that Kairos moment and those paradigm shifts in our lives that God will cause. And the treasurable principle is this: time as we know it's going to stop. I just have to realize that. That's that Father time. And unless Jesus comes back while we live, that's the only people that won't realize that. All of our resources we own, they go away. How much time and resources do I have left? I don't know. I only can have today and have this be part of my life today and what I can do with it. I commend all of you just for being here on the call. It shows that you have an investment, that you're wanting to take time and investing into things like this. I genuinely commend all of you for doing that. It's exciting to see all of you and all of your faces here. It's a temporary possession can be turned into everlasting wealth. Just that's the key thing, and we understand that. And are we doing that? The internal inheritance, not retirement, is what we should be looking for. The importance of things can be measured by how much time we're willing to invest. And that's Rick Warren, a well-known pastor and an author and a speaker, says that. And I love this one from Jim Elliot, a Christian missionary, the Huarani people of Ecuador, who ultimately sacrificed his life for the sake of the mission. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. And that's just really something to consider today. When you look at an eternal return on your investment, it's a life-changing thing and could be a true paradigm shift in your life. And I just encourage you to explore that. I do have many of these books right here that if you guys can see the books. I have many in the office, The Genius of Generosity, and and the Treasure Principle, if you're interested in that. So I just encourage you all to investigate that for your lives and be on that mission somewhere. So I think that you want to have a Q&A at this point.
Yeah, so now's a good time. Thank you, Rye. I really like that. Like looking kind of that other perspective, another way of looking at life. Because like you said, the dot, it's so fleeting and it's, this current moment in time, but thinking of it like life in heaven. And I took a note. So living for the dot, or I'm sorry, not living for the dot, but for the line, whatever is given to Christ is immediately touched with immortality. So if we are thinking of everything we do and being intentional, that, you know, living for Christ. I think this is all really good. I know some people made some comments in the chat box, says thank you for sharing the books. Anyone have any ahas? We've got some questions here too. If you want to answer any of those, either in the chat or if you want to come off of mute to ask Rye.
I'd just like to say, let me get my video off before I run to work. Thank you for sharing your personal things that you do with us and how you made that commitment to the Lord and your contract. I think that's so beautiful and just so wonderful to also be able to reflect back to that often, to remind this is what I said to the Lord and I'm following through with that. I just get emotional. So just thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katanya.
Very nice. Anyone else? Any ahas or questions?
I like how you share from the perspective of investing time with people and that having a more like a eternal value, where in the business world a lot of things exist around investing financially. And I'm just wondering if you have, you're great at sharing stories, but is there a story where you can share of something where you saw the return, where you've invested time and saw the return before eternity?
Yeah, absolutely. And, time, like I say, was the biggest challenge for me coming from that Kinsey to Cancy mode.
Mm-hmm.
And, being entrepreneurial and things, as a lot of people on here are, you understand that. And like, the believe it or not, the money was the easier part from that point. It was time because, time was our commodity. Heard Daniel Burris say that back in 1992 at a big technology conference. He talked about Technotrends, his book, and but he said time is a commodity of the future, and it is our number one commodity that we really actually have, more so than the resources. So that was a struggle for me. And so here's some of the things where the change in that. So there's a young man named Rocco Piacentino. He wouldn't mind me sharing you that God put him into my life through another friend, and his father had passed away. And Rocco, normally, of course, I'd pray for him and be there, but God called me to actually spend time with him and spend energy and emotion to help Rocco through this. He really went into a deep depression. And so just decided to do that. You're just going to be part of your life, and you're going to reach out to them and have long coffees with them. Even I don't even drink coffee, but that's what we call it, right? And so the investment of that is to see a life transform, and also to see Rocco move from the struggles that he had to be able to be more live with joy, even though he has trials in his life and things like that. So Rocco's a young man, he's like a second son to me now. And wow, God just blesses that. And of course, Rocco's a high energy, dynamic personality. He blesses other people a lot. And so that's probably, Susie, one where in the past I might have just prayed for it. I probably wouldn't have spent that kind of time. I just wouldn't have. I wouldn't have allocated time. And there's several people like that. That at the timing, like the Mung family, Ted Mung was dying, and we decided, no, I'm just going to be with him until he dies. That's what I was called to do, whatever that meant. And my beautiful wife does that, Sue, like I say, Tuesdays with Becky. So that was just a blessing for particularly his wife, Patty. They're older couple, and they didn't have a lot of the resources are tough when that happens, right? And there's family things, and we just adopt them. You just adopt them and be with them until you have it. And who got blessed by that? Of course, you get blessed tremendously, because Ted's life and learning about the blessings and his such strong faith in the Lord was so wonderful, even through all these trials. Wow, I don't know who blessed who more. I think he did me. So, but that's what God calls you to do. That would be an example of one, Susie.
Great. Thank you, Susie.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I put my question in the chat because I'm not sure I'm excellent at when I start to talk, I get a little off kilter, but my role in my work world is a development person for a nonprofit. And, you know, and this is true for for-profit business people too, that we have a real need for financial, you know, the ability to bring money in. And I think that I have a natural heart for eternal return on investment. I want to spend time with people. And in turn, I think when you spend time with people, you find out where their heart is, needs to be, or, you know, what they need as donors, and where you believe that their alignment with their passions and their, beliefs, where they want to give their money, whether that's to us or not. How do you balance that need for time, which I think oftentimes is part of the eternal return on investment, and those real actual financial needs that we have to do the everyday operating? Is there
Aaron,
any just active tip?
yeah, Aaron, that's a great question. And, I was involved in this a long time before as one of those donors, and it was on the board kind of person.
Mhm.
And not negative, I was a transactional giver because I just got it. I gave my life to Christ to a similar ministry, right? So to me, I was just, what do you need, right? We spend literally 10 minutes, not even. What would you need? How can I help you? Great, here it is. I didn't understand. I thought everybody was like that. We always do. Everybody's like that. Everybody's like me. And that what I learned from this is that the best ministry I actually do is the ministry with our donors and our potential people that never have donated. All right. And so I've really had to take that time, that kind of there. I'm really not there. I'm there to minister to them, not their pastor, but I'm really there to pass on blessings and minister to those people and have relationships with them and understand them. And that's how really the justification of that is. And of course, there's only so many people you can do that with, but the people that I do spend time with, that's my focus. It's really on uh, there are my things back. It's really on building a relationship and how can I serve them? How can I bless them in every aspect of whatever when I come in? That's what it's all about. So that's how I really spend time with them. And some of the best ministry that we do today, my best friends and things like that come from that relationship, Aaron. It really is. And so and again, there's people that are in the life cycle. You have to just spend how many people you can do that with. But whatever aspect we can, we're always trying to bless those people, by praying with them, praying for them. I've had sitting down with people, and the first question I just asked the fellow where he went to church. I mean, just, hey, how you doing? Like, just like this. And the person started crying. Now, the person that referred him to me, he knew he needed to get him in front of somebody, like someone or somebody that people he can be with that can help. I didn't know that. He just referred him and said, hey, man, meet with and Brian wouldn't mind mentioning that. He's a wonderful, dearest friend. We meet once a month where we're at just to call and fellowship. So at that point, anything about to do with FCA went away. We're just there to help the man. And it was, probably years later, he's very much of an advocate, and he's passed that on to other people as well. So that's a classic thing,
Yeah. I laugh. I think inadvertently, whether you intended for this, the answer that I heard from that was to focus on less people. Like, I will not have the time to do that with everybody. And yesterday we did some development work, which I actually presented about, which was, champions are there. Like, I can only do so much, but if I invest in that small group of 5 people, those 5 people then they're going to go tell the next person, and they're going to invest in them in an eternal way, that will really plant those, seeds so that
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's true. And then, so there's different levels, right? But everybody we chat with, we always want to minister to. We tell our people, if you, even at, we had an event a little bit ago, and our focus is always to bring the gospel of Christ and to minister to people through the word of God and prayer, no matter what we're doing. And so, and then out of that, God will raise up some people that maybe periods of time you spend more time with, depending on where they're at in their life. I just had, one of the fellows I was supposed to meet with this morning, he says, I got walking pneumonia, and I'm getting older now. It's making me pretty sick. So that's where you get our prayer team up, man, right away. Let's go. Everybody's got to start praying for John. It's those kind of things. Yeah. And God brings the people to spend time with more at a certain times than others. Yeah.